Welcome, everyone. We're really glad to have you here. And before I turn the program over to Helga Buitrago to talk about what the GCP Baseline Coffee Code is, we wanted to share a joint vision so that we can all embark on this consultative process with the vision that we are sustainability champions and experts with very deep and committed and different extensive backgrounds in our industry and sector. And really what we're coming together to do is to compare and contrast our knowledge and our abilities to come up with a sustainability foundation code that we can all embrace, that can become a shared imperative to give us solid footing and solid ground to practice and improve sustainability practices and impacts all over the world. So that's the grand vision of the code. And we're going to dive in now to tell you about how we think we can do this together. And we're very eager to have your commentary and your participation as the meeting proceeds. So now I'd like to bowl this meeting ball across the ocean to my colleague Helga Buitrago in Bonn, Germany. Helga?
Thank you, Mary. We're really excited to be able to share this work and the thinking that we have been developing in the last months with you today. So in the next couple of slides, I'm going to present a couple of pieces of information that are important for the context. I'll start about what's the Baseline Coffee Code, a bit of history, how this sits within the work that the Global Coffee Platform does, who are the users of this reference code. So before we dive actually into the process and more details. So I'll start saying that the Baseline Coffee Code is a sector-wide reference for baseline coffee sustainability. So it is what we as a sector have agreed are the foundations for sustainability. It does not mean that there cannot be more that can be done, or that is the only thing that we're going to do in the supply chain, but at least it gives us a shared understanding about at farm level, at production and primary processing, what are these foundations for sustainability. The current version of the Baseline Coffee Code has 27 principles that cover topics under the economic, the social, and the environmental dimension. And it also has 10 unacceptable principles that are those practices that we want to see eradicated from the coffee sector. And we all know that the sustainability, it is an evolving concept. For example, the topic of climate change was not so present in our agenda as 10 years ago, for example. So this revision and this code is an invitation to align at scale around sorry, I got a message, around an advanced understanding of baseline sustainability principles. It provides us an opportunity to actually reach to the farmers that we have not been able to reach with baseline sustainability practices. The ambition is that 100% of the global coffee production is meeting at least these practices and that the unsustainable practices are eradicated. So as we focus at the production level, the idea is also that other innovations at farm level and in the supply chain can be built upon this. So a bit of history before we move forward on how the Baseline Coffee Code is positioning in the organization. We get a lot of questions about what's the difference between the 4C code and the Baseline Coffee Code. So they both have the same origins, so they share a heritage. For those of you who have been in the coffee sector for a while, you may recall the launch of the Common Code for the Coffee Community. This was done in 2004, and it followed quite a broad and participatory approach. Then from 2004 until 2016, the 4C code was maintained by the 4C Association. And then in 2016, after the Global Coffee Platform was established, the 4C code and its verification system was transferred to an independent certification entity that is now called 4C Services. Since then, the Baseline Coffee Code has remained with GCP. GCP has been the guardian of this code. And over the past years, the technical committee, which is a subcommittee of the board, and now for this revision, with the support of an advisory task force, has been working to revise and to update the Baseline Coffee Code. But then where does this work sit in the Global Coffee Platform? GCP is a membership association that includes all actors in the supply chain, from producers, traders, roasters and retailers, and civil society. And what we have in common is that we think sustainability is a shared responsibility. And the mission is to build a thriving and sustainable coffee sector. The main areas of work that GCP has are convene for impact, enable local action, and measure to advance. The Baseline Coffee Code sits in this part of measure to advance. As we develop this shared understanding, we also can make progress in terms of seeing how are we advancing, or what areas actually require more attention. So it's very close to our work on measurement. The work that GCP does has a very strong link to the work of the country platforms. And these platforms is where this convening for impact happens at local level, where there are conversations about what are the key sustainability pressing issues and how they can be addressed. And of course, we do all that to enable to improve and to strengthen the enabling environment, and to move forward towards the goals of GCP that are farmers' prosperity, improved livelihoods, and conserving nature, and to move towards the fulfillment of the Sustainable Development Goals. And before then we dive into more details about the Baseline Coffee Code, I want to say a couple of words about how this work connects to other pieces of GCP that are quite instrumental. First, I mentioned about the work of the country platforms. So the Baseline Coffee Code as a reference code is an important point for the development of national sustainability strategies. In most of these countries, they have developed what they call the National Sustainability Curricula, which is the adaptation of a local understanding of baseline sustainability practices. So once we revise the Baseline Coffee Code, then the National Sustainability Curriculum makes a context analysis of that sector agreement and makes them relevant for the local stakeholders. So it is complementary to those national sustainability curricula, and is not a replacement of those. Another piece of work that the Baseline Coffee Code underpins is the equivalence mechanism. The equivalence mechanism is a framework that we have developed to assess if sustainability schemes or programs, either public, civil society-led, or private sector, from the private sector, can be considered equivalent to the Baseline Coffee Code. So we have a look at whether they include the practices and the principles that we have in the Baseline Coffee Code, but we also have a look on whether how they are implemented. So if we have, what kind of assurance is behind, what kind of data is being collected, and what kind of claims are being done around this scheme. So this is also quite an important piece of work, and the Baseline Coffee Code underpins this work. Those schemes that are recognized as equivalent to the Baseline Coffee Code are then later eligible to be included in the GCP roaster and retail reporting on sustainable coffee purchases. So here you see how these three different pieces then are connected to the Baseline Coffee Code, and how on one hand side, we try to really promote the uptake of sustainable practices, and at the same time, at the consumer end, we try to drive for further transparency and further uptake of buying from those producers that actually follow at least practices that are equivalent to the Baseline Coffee Code. So now the question is, who can then use the standard, the code, this reference code? So there are different potential users, and they have different uses as well. So GCP does not implement the Baseline Coffee Code, but it offers this as a reference framework for different users. So you have here, for example, producers. A producer or a group of producers can actually assess their own practices against the Baseline Coffee Code and see what areas for improvement are there. Governments and in coffee producing countries and country platforms as well, they can use this, as I mentioned, as a reference for the national strategy, for the national sustainability curriculum that at the end are going to be the foundation of the extension services programs. We have also traders, roasters, and retailers that can use this as a reference for the foundations of their own corporate sustainability schemes, strategies, or programs for responsible sourcing. And as I mentioned, also combined with the equivalence mechanism, then we use the baseline coffee code to be able to assess whether a scheme is equivalent or not, and then eligible for the reporting on sustainable purchases. And two last users of this code are the financial sector and the donors, basically to drive their investments and their programs with practices or with aligning this with production that is in line with baseline sustainability.